Hey, what is up, guys? Okay, today's video is going to be Frog Monarchs versus Hieratic Blue Eyes, and as you can probably tell by the start, or by the time that this video is running, it's a very long duel. So there are times where I understand, like, it can get a bit annoying, but this was pretty much like one of the few duels I did get to record where people didn't rage quit after a short period of time. So yeah, I drew a decent hand, got a couple of hand traps, so I set the Reckless Greed and end my turn there. And he draws, summons the Maiden, and then passes his turn. So I'm thinking, right, Maiden can't be targeted for effects or attack. I draw the creature swap. I don't really have anything that can properly get rid of it. I did think about special summoning swap frog, then creature swapping, because creature swap isn't technically classed as targeting because your opponent chooses the card, if that makes sense. So it doesn't class as targeted, so I do the Reckless Greed. I end up drawing the Monarchs Stormforth, which is an amazing card that Monarchs received in Primal Origin. It's basically Soul Exchange, except it doesn't target, so Boojin players be hating. You can't negate this with Turtle, so I'm just messing around with tokens at the moment because I sent Reckless Greed to the graveyard. It probably would have just been easier to have added Reckless back to my hand, but I just thought, nah, I'll just use my tokens. So we're just faffing around with the tokens at the moment, and while I'm just faffing around, I am thinking what plays I can do. I was still thinking about the Swap Frog play. What else was there? There was the Monarch Stormforth play. It essentially all involved me tributing their monster for Dark Dust Spirit, so I decided I'm just reading through the Monarch Stormforth because I'm fairly new to, I've never really played Frog Monarchs. I don't know what some of the decent cards are. So I activate Monarch Stormforth, I tribute summon my Dark Dust Spirit using his Blue-Eyed Maiden, and of course Dust Spirit's effect would activate if it does activate, but as there are no monsters, everything's all good. So then he says he gets Maiden's effect, and I'm like, no, you don't get its effect. One, it's when it's targeted for a card effect, and two, the Monarch Stormforth doesn't target. So there are a lot of little debates in this. As you can probably tell by the title what one of them is, which didn't really make sense at all, because like I explained with the Monarch Stormforth, it never says that it targets in the effect, so why would it target if it didn't? So I'm just explaining that it's sent to the graveyard by tributing, and then he says, yeah, your spell targeted my monster. I then explain that it doesn't target, it simply means so I can use any monsters you have, while another example is with Soul Exchange, I have to target one monster that you control before I can use it for a tribute summon, so I only can use that specific monster. But with the Monarch Stormforth, I can use any monster on the field that you have. So then we're just debating, saying it does, it doesn't. And then I basically end the whole conversation by saying, where does it say target an opponent's monster? So then he pretty much just gives up on the argument and says fine, so he shuffles it into his deck and then carries on. So then I attack with, I'm just adding a little extra, just saying like, it just allows me to tribute monsters you control for tribute summons, doesn't target any of them. So I then directly attack with Dark Dust Spirit, giving him 2,200 points of damage. Hefty chunk. And then during the end phase, Dark Dust Spirit returns to my hand, which in a lot of cases may not be a good thing with spirits, but I feel like with Dark Dust Spirit it's what makes it really good, because essentially every turn you've got that free nuking of the field. So as Dark Dust Spirit returns to my hand, I have 7 cards, so that's too many that I can have, so I have to discard one, so I decide to discard the creature swap. He then activates... sorry guys. It's too early in the morning. So he activates the hand destruction, so I send Mega Mobius and the creature swap to draw 2 cards. He then says he gets Nebthit's effect, but Nebthit doesn't. Nebthit only gets his effect if it's tribute summoned. So I end up drawing into the double Dupe Frog, which is food for Swap Frog. So I'm very much set next turn. So I'm saying whose effect, and then I see the Nebthit, and I'm like, when was a Nebthit tributed? You sent him to the grave. So then he says, oh, my mistake. I do understand that he is new to this deck, but still, even if you are new to a deck, you should generally know like the basics, where the Hieratics get their effects when tributed. Maiden only gets its effect if it's targeted by an attack or card effect. And yeah, that basically. So a turn goes by with Reckless Greed. I discard the Dupe Frog to special summon Swap Frog, thus getting Swap Frog's effect to dump a Treeborn in my grave. And I'm basically just start to set up my grave. So there's coming up shortly, which is Swap Frog's secondary effect, where once per turn I can return 1 monster from my field to my hand to gain a normal summon of a frog monster. So I do understand where he was coming from with the whole once per turn aspect, but the way I see it, that once per turn basically means once per turn while this card is on the field. So if it was to be sent to the grave or returned to my hand, the effect essentially resets, allowing me to use it again. So I send the second Dupe Frog from my hand to the grave to special summon Swap Frog. And this time I decide to drop a Ronin Totem from my deck to the grave, purely so I can potentially go for Gachi plays later on. So as you can see, I do run the Sea Lancer as well. That's just like a little personal tech of mine. Purely because with Ronin Totem you're going to go for a lot of XYZ plays. Meaning that there's going to be a lot of frogs banished. So this is where I use Swap Frog's effect to return him to my hand. And then he's saying, wait, how did your monster go back? So then I say, once per turn you return 1 monster you control, get additional normal. So I just copy and paste that into the chat. So yeah, once per turn you can return 1 monster you control to your hand to normal summon 1 frog monster except Swap Frog and Frog the Gem. I never understood what all the H was for Frog the Gem. Although I suppose they just want to keep it in the archetype. So he says once per turn you did it twice, and I'm saying yeah, that's how it works basically. So yeah, that I just say that basically means once per turn while this card is on the field. And then he starts arguing that no, it means once per turn permanently. And then later on, after a couple more sentences of argument, I decide to use the analogy of then explain why players get to use Lone Fire about 5 times per turn, especially in Sylvans, when you're milling peacekeepers, and then special summoning Lone Fire and Lone Fire effect, special summon Hermitry, or say Jacoya, or any other Sylvan monsters. So I quite like Sylvans. I might play Sylvans for next week's Duels. But yeah, I'm probably quite. I feel that I'm terrible at deck building. In all honesty, I don't know what cards work well with these. Although after a bit of research, I probably could make at least a decent Sylvan deck. So I then explain why people use Lone Fire about 10 times a turn. Lone Fire is once per turn, and then he just says fine. I presume very sternly. So he draws and passes, and the token. I start to get my draws back from Reckless Greed. So then, during standby phase, Treeborn Frog is summoned. So, because yeah, like I said, with Frog Monarchs, you don't run a lot of permanent back row, purely because you can just keep on getting Treeborn. So I tribute Treeborn for the Dark Dust Spirit. Dust Spirit's effect activates, blowing up everything, and I was just double checking that Maiden does get its effect when it's targeted by a card effect. So then he sends it to the grave, and then he says that Maiden gets her effect when she doesn't, because Dark Dust Spirit doesn't target. So I say no, he says why, and then it's when it's targeted, and then he says Dark Dust Spirit targets, but this is the same argument with the Monarch Stormforth, that it doesn't say target in the text, so it doesn't target. And this was just getting really annoying at the moment, because it's just a case of reading the card. So, and then he says it targets all other monsters, but it never says that it targets anything on the field. It just destroys all of them. And then he keeps checking his deck, which really annoys me, because you're not supposed to be doing that. And I'm getting a bit peeved off at the moment, so I'm just saying, like, where does it say target in his effect? And he's saying search it up, but what's the point? It doesn't say target in the effect, so why would it target? So I end up copy and pasting it into the chat, and then just saying, where does it say target in this? Yeah, where does it say target in this? And then he does keep looking at his deck, and it just does get really annoying, because you're not allowed to do that. I understand this isn't in ranked, but it's still just like a pet peeve that you have, that I have, where it's just like, you don't do things you're not supposed to be doing. You can't look at your deck unless there's an effect involving the deck. And then he says search it counts as target, but I'm 100% sure that it doesn't. I think he's just trying to be smart and try and rule shark me, but he's failing at it badly. And shortly after this, he does end up rage quitting. I say shortly, in about 5 minutes time, after a couple more of these happen. He ends up rage quitting. So yeah, comment, rate, subscribe, guys. Oh, like as well. Deck profiles, deck profiles, just comment them down below. I'll try and get them to you as quick as possible. So yeah, and that's it for today's duel. So see you guys next time. Bye. You feel too long since you're having fun, but I know that you know that you can't win. You know that I smile, my feelings are fine, but that don't matter now.